Hello, so today we're going to read another chapter of Jim Woodford's book, Heaven, an Unexpected Journey. This is a really, what I would say, exciting, significant, interesting chapter, and I hope you enjoy it. The title of the chapter is Chapter 8, Face to Face with a Special Person. I'm not going to say his name, a special person. I was engrossed in the majesty of, I was engrossed in the majesty and sheer dimension of all that I had seen. So much that I lost track of the tallest angel who had been leading me through heaven. I was engrossed in the majesty and sheer dimension of all that I had seen. So much that I lost track of the tallest angel who had been leading me through heaven. This angel was 15 feet tall. I was in awe of the flowers and was again aware of the breeze and gentle sound of heaven's musical accompaniment all around me that flowed to the very throne of God. As I turned around, I noticed the tallest guardian a short distance away from, as I turned around, I noticed the tallest guardian a short distance away behind me on a little rise. I turned around towards him and saw him bowing in reverence towards a figure that was even taller than him. I wondered whether this was yet another angel, but as brilliant as the other angels' robes were, this figure, this mysterious figure's garment, was as brilliant as the sun itself. His bearing was noble, and a golden light emanated from this figure, making the light of the other angels dim by comparison. Sunlight. In awe, I turned right around and staggered slowly up the path towards this figure. The golden light flowed up and out of the figure like a fountain. So it was kind of going like this. The light was flowing like this out of the figure. The golden light flowed up and out of the figure like a fountain, cascading downwards and pooling around him. The golden flow encompassed everything around the figure. Even when the light would converge with the flowers around the figure, though they were already in bloom, they bloomed even higher and more beautifully. So just so you understand that, he's saying when this kind of flowing light would come out of this figure and it would interact with flowers, they would become even more beautiful than previously after this light touches them, which is interesting. This flower stretches upward towards him. The flower stretched upwards towards him. This golden sunlight flowed from him with the properties of a liquid. So it was like a liquid light, which is interesting. I watched in fascination and awe as this light slowly made its way down the slope path towards me. As it pulled around my feet, I was suddenly filled with the knowledge that this incredible figure was none other than Jesus Christ of Nazareth, the Son of the living God. I had to get closer. So when the light came into contact with him, he was imparted knowledge, and he realized that this figure that he'd seen was Jesus. Remember, for those who are watching this video and this chapter, Jim Woodford was an atheist. He did not believe in God. He did not have a background in religion in a classical sense. So he didn't actually know who this figure was. It was only when this liquid light made contact with him that he realized, wow, this figure who I'd never seen before, who I don't know who he is Jesus of Nazareth. That is the Son of God. That is what he learned. So I'm going to continue. I had only taken a few steps towards the figure when I was aware that the angels had come behind me and gently but firmly held me back. So what happened is Jim Woodford tried to take steps forward towards this figure, and then the angels that he had been traveling through heaven with came and grabbed him and said, no, you can't move any closer, stop. So the face of this figure was hidden from me at first. He couldn't see his face, but there was a wavy shimmer surrounding him, like one might see on the surface of a road on a hot summer's day. So for example, when it's hot and there's that distortion in the air, and it kind of almost looks like waves. He's saying there was like a kind of veil that was covering the figure's face. That was kind of like a shimmering veil that meant that you couldn't see the person's face properly. So the face of this figure was hidden from me at first, but there was a wavy shimmer surrounding him like one might see on the surface of a road on a hot summer's day. His face was in profile to me. Though I could not see his face, there was a deep, soul-stirring perception that connected me to him almost immediately. Then when the flow of this light and love touched me, my spirit leapt with the realization that I was in the presence of the Lord of heaven and earth, Jesus Christ. The light around me was sunlight, S-O-N light. Words are inadequate again to describe the appearance and bearing of the only begotten Son of God. He was not a picture in a children's Bible or a legendary mythological character. I was speechless at his appearance, though I could not yet see his face. The man wore a simple yet beautiful seamless white garment with a red sash. There appeared to be no hem to this brilliant garment, but a kind of golden mist that flowed at its base. The angels then bowed slightly and backed away in reverence to Jesus and went down on one knee before him. All became quiet before the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, Jesus Christ. Suddenly, the shimmer that was veiling the face of Jesus vanished, and then he turned fully towards me, and then I could see him clearly. The angels who had been escorting me were beautiful, but now the face of Jesus was before me. Seeing his face was the apex of my journey to heaven. And what a face! This face was ruggedly handsome, yet surprisingly human. His hair wasn't long, like I would have expected from seeing many paintings and pictures depicting Jesus. His hair was brown and curled just over his robe. I repeat, his hair, so the hair of Jesus that Jim Woodford saw, was not long, like he would have expected from seeing many paintings on earth depicting Jesus by many artists. His hair wasn't long. He didn't have long flowing hair. It was shorter hair. His hair was brown and curled just over the collar of his robe. Now, as I stood before Jesus, he smiled at me. The most radiant, beautiful, loving smile, like a father would give a son or daughter. It was just overwhelmingly beautiful, and I felt the warmth of his smile flowing through me. His smile portrayed unconditional love just for me. Someone, in his case, who had never ever acknowledged Jesus, who had turned away from him at every turn along the way of my earthly life. Then I saw the most striking and unforgettable aspect of Jesus' face, his eyes. The eyes of Jesus of Nazareth flashed with blue and gold and green, drawing me into a deep sense of eternity. The eyes of Jesus were filled with relentless love for me and for you. These eyes that had never seen my devotion to him or worship, that had never met my eyes looking at him, his eyes spoke volumes to me. And as I gazed more deeply, I saw something that moved me then and moves me to tears even now, years later. In those eyes of Jesus was a well of both compassion and sorrow. There was sorrow for those who had not acknowledged or recognized him. There was sadness for how I had personally lived my life apart from him. So much time and a life lost and squandered. Yet there was great love for me that so encompassed me that I felt as though I was the only person ever born. In those moments suspended in eternity, I was his sole focus. This same love is available for all people who know and turn towards him. And with this gracious love flows forgiveness for all people, no matter what they have done. Now the tall angel stood in front of Jesus, and as he bowed low to the ground, he brought something out of the sleeve of his robe. It appeared to be a very thin book of some kind, which the angel then opened for Jesus to read. It was as thin as a menu from a local restaurant. I don't know how, but somehow I knew that this was the book of my life, filled with both good and bad. It was a thin volume with sparse entries of any kindness or love that I had shown for my fellow man. My heart sank and my soul was crushed with the most incredible shame. I had invested my life in myself, mostly ignorant of the needs of other people around me. As Jesus began to read, the angel turned his face towards me, focusing those beautiful violet eyes on me. Then I heard his voice in my thoughts saying to me, James, what did you do with the life that my master gave you? Sadly, I had no answer. I stood face to face with Jesus Christ, exposed. I was filled with a deep despair and wondering how such indifference could dwell in the presence of such love. Yet Jesus never referred to the thinness of that book. He never looked down on me with shame or judged me. The shame and regret were mine, not his. I had judged and condemned myself. In the midst of this face-to-face encounter, another feeling flowed from Jesus, and it was joy. His face was set on the edge of a smile, and I knew his heart was to impart his joy to me. His joy had nothing to do with the volume of good things I had done, whether thick or thin. As Jesus was silently reading the book, my life unfolded before me. The words he read became images that leapt off the page of the book and into my mind. Pictures of events from early childhood to the most recent days before my experience in heaven. As they say, my life flashed before my eyes. It didn't take long for Jesus to read the thin book of my life. He had been inclined forward, and now he straightened up with the angel now bowing more deeply. Though Jesus' stature didn't increase, he seemed to be even taller to me. The book was now closed, and the angel replaced the book in the sleeve of his robe and vanished. I was filled with anticipation as it seemed that Jesus was about to speak to me. It is that feeling in the air before a thunderstorm that comes during a hot summer's day just before the clap of thunder. Then I heard the most elegant, deep, baritone voice speaking my name. James. He spoke audibly to me now. Not as thoughts transferred, he actually spoke these words. To hear the voice, to hear that voice speaking my name penetrated to the deepest parts of me. Jesus, the Son of God, spoke my name. His voice caused me to stagger for a moment, and I wanted to kneel as the angels had when Jesus first appeared, but the angels kept me upright. Remember, the angels are holding them right now. When Jesus spoke my name, he held out his hand to me with the palm turned upwards and towards me in a gesture of invitation. So he says, when Jesus spoke my name, he held out his hand to me with the palm turned upwards like this. He held his hand like this. When Jesus spoke my name, he held out his hand to me with the palm turned upwards and towards me in a gesture of invitation. I tried to move forward, but I couldn't. I was frozen in awe. But when Jesus held out his hand, I saw the radiant light of his garment shining through a hole in his wrist. The wrist that had been nailed to the cross for me. So now his hand is like this. It's kind of extended like this. The wrist that had been nailed to the cross for me, for all of us. It was not a bloody or jagged hole, but clearly an odd-shaped scar he willingly took upon himself. The moment I realized it was the scar of the crucifixion, I was filled with an overwhelming sense. I was filled with a profound and overwhelming sense of sadness, guilt, and shame. The moment I realized that the scar was from the scar of the crucifixion. I felt sadness for the savage way my sin had killed him. I felt guilt for ignoring his sacrifice all my life. I felt shame for the life I had lived. It was so personal and intense, a moment it was as though I had held the hammer and driven the nails into his body myself. Now Jesus looked directly at me with his eyes filled with compassion and love. Something life-changing happened in that brief encounter. How I longed to see those eyes again. All that I had searched for in my entire life was fulfilled in those eyes and the words that he spoke to me. Now Jesus fixed his total attention on me and spoke, James, my son, this is not yet your time. Go back and tell your brothers and sisters of the wonders we have shown you. While these words were brief, they were long on meaning for me. Though Jesus didn't speak many words to me, they were powerful and transformational. James, to hear God, who created everything, speak my name, had deep meaning for me. He knew my name. I was not some anonymous blob of humanity. I had a name, and he was speaking it. As Jesus spoke my name, I sensed my value in his eyes. Jesus knows who I am. When Jesus spoke my name, it was as though I was the only person ever born. His next words poured life into my empty heart and filled a longing I'm just now understanding. My son. I had longed to know a father, a dad, from my school days when I would occasionally climb the hill to the cemetery where my earthly father was buried. I wanted a dad. Many times I long to hear my father answer the frequent questions that all kids have. Though I had a greater father figure in my grandfather, all kids notice the absence of a father. Dads teach a kid how to throw a ball or steady them as they learn to ride a bike. Being called son also made me a part of the family of God and gave me a new identity and purpose beyond myself. This is not your time. This meant to me that there would be a time when I would find heaven again as my home for eternity, to live in the nowness of God forever, forever present, forever known. How I yearn and long for that time when I will see Jesus face to face again, living in the city of the King for eternity. But his next words moved me from joy to sorrow. Go back and tell your brothers and sisters of the wonders we have shown you. His words were not a suggestion, they were a mission, and I was his agent. I must come back to my question. Who am I? Who am I to tell anybody anything about God and heaven? I'm not a preacher or a Bible scholar. In fact, I've not spoken before crowds of Christian people or churches. In the world's estimation, I wasn't a bad person, but I might take ethics to the edge in a business deal. Life was all about me. Now, having received this commission from the mouth of Jesus himself, my arrogance was revealed. Before my experience with heaven and Jesus Christ, I was only concerned about what I possessed. Now my life was possessed by him. My qualification for this new mission would have to come from the sheer grace of God. I was out of control. The experience and the heart of heaven had begun a process of transformation and compassion in me. Though I can't tell this great story, though I can tell this great story, the greatest evidence of its truthfulness is my own personal transformation. I carry heaven in my heart with me into all of life. As I look into the eyes of other folks, I cannot help but recall the eyes of Jesus as we stood face to face. Now, staggering, somewhere between fear and joy, I tried to move towards him, but the angels held me back. I had interpreted Jesus reaching out to me as an invitation, but the hand was extended towards me to reveal the passion. Now rotated upwards with his palm toward me. My heart stopped. My heart was grieved. How could it be that I was being sent away? I had finally come home. My yearning was being fulfilled in that moment. I began to tearfully plead with Jesus, Lord, please let me stay. I won't be any trouble. Jesus, let me stay with you. The angels were now holding me back, and I remember trying to struggle past them to get to Jesus. It was pretty useless to resist the angels that were more than twice or 3 times my size. To my astonishment, when I turned once again to plead with Jesus, he was no longer there. In his place stood the tallest angel, who had suddenly reappeared. He looked at me with a tender, loving kindness, and with some sorrow said, I'm sorry, James, but you have to go. As he spoke, he extended his wings, clothed in immense power and authority, but barring my way forward. The next thing I knew, I was back in the same tunnel that had transported me to heaven, traveling in that same silent, windless light speed. And then I was aware of a different face and a far less gentle voice raised towards me. James, James. So that is chapter 8 of this fantastic book, and it covers Jim Woodford's experience of meeting Jesus Christ, the Son of God. It was a glorious, powerful, life-changing experience, and it further reinforces the unequivocal truth that Jesus Christ lives. He's real, and he's waiting for all who put their trust in him to receive them in glory. I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, if you enjoyed it, feel free to put a comment, feel free to like. If you want to, you can subscribe, you don't have to. Thank you so much for participating in this journey with me. Thank you.